Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 2022 Summer Solstice Indigenous Festival. Welcome, distinguished guests. I'm so happy you're all here, and I'm so happy that we're all here in person. First in-person event here since 2022, here at the Matawake farm, the brand new building. As you can see, it's brand new renovated. I'm so happy to be here. I'm Omar Debagi Pacheco. I'm the host of CBC Ottawa News. And I was here a couple weeks ago, and I just was blown away by how much effort was put into the festival, what's about to happen here in the next few days. I hope that you will all enjoy it. First of all, I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. We are, of course, on the unceded traditional Algonquin territory. And I used to hesitate to say that because I thought words should always be accompanied by actions. And I reflected on what actions can I take. I'm not a politician. I don't make policy. I am just a person. What can I do? And I ultimately ended up on thinking that my role was really to listen and to learn, and by learning perhaps to understand more. And I'm really happy to be here at this festival because I do believe that this is an opportunity to understand, to listen to each other, and to make connections. And I think those connections are extremely important. I have the privilege and good fortune of interviewing newsmakers, of interviewing community leaders, of interviewing politicians. And in doing so, I learn a lot, but where I learn more is by the human connections that I establish when I have the privilege of coming out here, and I've interviewed some of the organizers of this event. And by connecting human to human, I feel like we learn so much more. I wanted to share with you just a little story of when I was here a couple weeks ago. I met some of the organizers, and we got to talking about sort of growing up here in Ottawa. We had both grown up downtown. We had been somewhat isolated from the people in our home communities. For myself, I'm Lebanese, Ecuadorian, Canadian, a settler. For her, she is Anishinaabe. Her home community is in Kitigan-Zibi, but she was here, and she would look around and she would see no one that looked like her. And I could connect with that. I could understand that because I would grow up and be the only brown kid in my class, and I would think of how isolating that was. And in that little moment, that little connection, I think just helped me understand a little bit more about the importance of festivals like these, the importance of making connections with people outside of our own communities, and perhaps that way, by understanding a little bit more about, let's face it, the dark history that we have in Canada and the long road that we have towards reconciliation. One of the guests that we're going to hear from later on today has said that reconciliation for him is an action word. And so my hope is that through this festival, we will all take some sort of action to feel more together as a community and to progress along the path to reconciliation. I would like to invite our first guest to open the ceremonies. Elder Claudette Commanda is a Anishinaabe, Algonquin Anishinaabe from the Kitigan-Zibi First Nation. Elder Commanda, welcome.
Thank you, Prime Minister. As you all can see, I'm not exactly the tallest person in the house, right? But my grandfather, the late William Commanda, had once said that she does not need a microphone. But thank you. Miigwech, Trina, and to your team for inviting me to be here. Miigwech, kakina, miigwech kibijayego ma nongum, pijajik nichkiwedug, pijajik anishnabeg, pijajik oma anishnabeki oma maweneniwag. Bienvenue à tous. Bienvenue toutes mes amis, mes frères, mes sœurs. Bienvenue ici au territoire non cédé de nos ancêtres, la nation algonquin. I am always honored and proud, always honored and proud. On behalf of the Algonquin Nation and these two beautiful Algonquin sisters that stand here with me, and to the Algonquin people that are here, we welcome you, Prime Minister Trudeau, Leader Natan, Obed, Trina, and you and your remarkable team, to the other leaders, elders, community members, children, media, everyone who is here. Welcome. Welcome to this beautiful, unceded homeland of our ancestors, the Algonquin people. The homeland that has been here since time immemorial, and the homeland that we must ensure will be here forevermore. It is said when we come together, let us put our hearts, our spirit, and our voice together as one. Let us acknowledge that great mystery, the one who created all. Let us give thanks for the joy of living. Let us remember our ancestors. Let us remember our relatives. Let us be thankful. It may be raining outside today, but a few seconds ago you just heard the beautiful, powerful voices of those thunder beings. They are hearing our prayers. And indeed, they will bring our grandfather, the sun, to shine his light and his warmth upon us. Let us give thanks for the rain, for indeed that rain is part of the Creator's creation, and we do need that cleansing. What a fitting day to have rain, because today we are celebrating. We are celebrating National Indigenous Peoples Day. You are learning about First Nations, Inuit and Métis people, our fine contributions to this land yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Healing. Healing. We are on a journey called reconciliation. It's healing. I thank the leaders today. I thank the leaders for bringing forth this door of opportunity that we can walk together as Indigenous peoples and Canadian. Walk the road of healing. Let us put our hearts, our spirit together as one, and let us give thanks to Creator. As we say, Chimi Gwedj Kijimanado Kinakego, we thank the Creator for all of His blessings and the joy of living. Let us put our hearts, our spirit, and our voice together as one, and let us honor and recognize that first mother, that one mother for all peoples. As we say, Chimi Gwedj Jojoaki, we thank our Mother the Earth. Let us put our hearts, our spirit, and our voice together as one. Let us honor and recognize those first grandparents that the Creator has blessed all peoples with. We acknowledge our grandfather, the sun, Mishomiskizis. We acknowledge our grandmother, the moon, Kokomistapigizis. Let us give thanks from that water life to the plant life, the medicine life, the animal life. Let us give thanks to one another. And Creator to bless you with that love, Zagiediwin. The Creator to bless you with Minapamadzuin, that good life, good health. The Creator to bless you with Mashkawizuin, that strength to build a beautiful day, a path of healing for today and tomorrow, for our children all together. And let us put our hearts together and say to one another, Nibuksendam Zagiediwin. Gizagian Ichkiweduk, Gizagian. We put our hearts together, and the Creator's blessed us by saying, He loves us, and we love Him as we love one another. Thank you for being here. Let us celebrate. Let us hold Indigenous Peoples Day every day in this beautiful country called Canada. We need to do this for our children today and tomorrow. For we all know that every child matters. Let us rejoice. Chimigwej. Thank you. Migwej.
Elder Commanda, thank you so much for those beautiful words. This festival comes together as a result of a huge community effort. So just before we get underway, I want to give a big shout out to all the organizations involved in this 2022 Summer Solstice Indigenous Festival. The National Association of Friendship Centers, the Assembly of First Nations, the Native Women's Association of Canada, the Congress of Aboriginal Peoples, and Inuit Tapiriit Kanatami, who have stepped into the role to co-host this year's program. As such, you're going to notice a lot of Inuit-themed events here this year. And to speak more about that, I would like to invite our very distinguished guest, Mr. Natan Obed.
Nakumik, thank you very much. Tungasogitsi, welcome everyone to the 2022 Summer Solstice Indigenous Peoples Festival. It's not just the events today that will be unfolding at the Manhuaki farm here. It will be over the course of the next 4 or 5 days. So I encourage everyone to participate. I'd like to start by recognizing Elder Commanda and all other elders that may be here today. Your wisdom, your guidance really grounds the work that we all do and also grounds our communities. So I just wanted to take a moment and thank all of the elders for the wisdom that they give to us. I'd also like to recognize all Indigenous political leadership that is here. The work that we all do, not only in unity between First Nations, Inuit and Métis, but also between Indigenous peoples and provincial, territorial, and federal governments. That work is necessary, and it's a part of the larger reconciliation effort that we are all undertaking. And for Prime Minister Trudeau and any other federal elected leaders here or other provincial or territorial leaders here, thank you for showing up. Thank you for being here with us on Indigenous Peoples Day, and thank you for making reconciliation a key part of your government's platform, and one that we recognize has not been the easiest to do and to maintain. We live in a country that still struggles to understand how to respect Indigenous peoples, even though we now are at a place where all Canadians recognize that Indigenous peoples have rights, and Indigenous peoples, this is all Indigenous peoples' lands. Actually, that is something to celebrate. And celebrate our resilience and also our push for our self-determination. Because 20 or 30 years ago, we wouldn't be having the same conversations we are today, and we certainly wouldn't be sharing this day on this farm with the Prime Minister. So I am very hopeful. I'm optimistic about our future. I'm optimistic about the work that we all do together. And I also just want to celebrate First Nations, Inuit and Métis across this country today, celebrate our resilience, celebrate our incredible strength. We are just world leaders when it comes to arts, when it comes to innovation, and we have cultures and languages that are some of the oldest and most complex across the world. We live in such a rich country, and a lot of that cultural richness comes from Indigenous languages, Indigenous cultures, Indigenous ways of knowing and being. And we need to just recognize how important that is, not only to ourselves and our communities, sometimes we take that for granted, but also to Canada and the world. As a part of that, we're going to see today and in the next few days amazing artists that will perform here and in this very room in just a minute. We also have art that will be for sale on these grounds. We will have all sorts of activities over the next few days, so I encourage people to not only participate as you can today despite the weather, but also to bring other people in and try to have more people come to these events over the next few days. I want to thank everyone that is making this possible. And I just want to say how thankful I am to play the role that I do, and also to be able to interact with so many different Indigenous peoples across this country, because we are all united. We have a common way of being in this world. We have a common respect for one another, and I think that's also important as well to take away. We can respect the land that we're on, just like I respect the Algonquins and the land that I work and I live on. I have a broad connection with the Algonquin and other First Nations and Métis as an Indigenous person, but we also can celebrate our differences as well, and the richness that we have in the different languages and the different cultural traditions. They don't have to compete. We can lift each other up to make it an even better relationship between us, and then also between us and non-Indigenous Canadians. I want to introduce the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, somebody that I've gotten to know over the last 6.5 years that we've been able to work together, and someone that has my deep respect for the work that you do and also the type of person that you are. And that, I think, is something that, as Indigenous people, sometimes we are looking for different things in people. than non-Indigenous people look for. And the way that I see you interact with your family, and the way I see you interact with your community, and also the respect that you give to people when you are physically in a space with them, those are values that we share. And I'm so proud to be able to have done so many things with you. Without further ado, I invite you to take the stage.
Bonjour tout le monde, quel plaisir d'être ici avec vous aujourd'hui. Merci ma chère amie Claudette, merci Commanda pour ton accueil sur ce territoire traditionnel algonquin, pour le peuple Anishinaabe qui est toujours là pour nous accueillir chez vous, chez nous. C'est un grand plaisir toujours de partager l'espace avec toi. I also want to thank Natan for your words, for your leadership as well. I think it is very fitting that this celebration of Indigenous Peoples Day be co-hosted by the leader of the Inuit Tapiriit Kanatami, the Inuit Peoples organization. Although it does bring to mind we're here celebrating, oh, this is the longest day of the year, but 18 hours maybe. Yeah, you get 6 months for your longest day of the year, but you know how to celebrate a solstice over many, many months. But what you said about leadership is very, very true. And I see it every day, and I see it in Indigenous leaders across the country who are stepping up in extraordinary ways to shape not just the future of their communities, of their nations, but of the country. Because we've seen time and time again over the past years how important it is to non-Indigenous Canadians that we be recognizing, celebrating, and rebuilding those relationships of trust, of partnership that go back to the very beginnings of settlers' experience in this land. The Indigenous peoples who first let the settlers know how to survive through a very long winter, how to find sustenance and nourishment in this extraordinary land, and helped shape a society and a community where identities are additive. When we talk a lot about the multicultural origins of Canada, English versus French, figuring out how to work together, we forget the extent to which that was all informed by Indigenous understanding, Indigenous perspectives that involved an openness to others, a respect for land, for partnerships, for adoptions, for identities that learn even as they challenged each other. And that provided the framework for Canada in a very, very real way, both in the earliest days, but continue to today. I think that's part of why it is so important that everyone, not just Indigenous peoples, be celebrating on this Indigenous Peoples Day. And it's important to remember, even as we talk about the Indigenous experience in Canada, talk about Indigenous identity and culture and contributions, that yes, we acknowledge the terrible wrongs generations of Canadian governments and institutions and individuals perpetrated on Indigenous peoples throughout our history. But we cannot only get wrapped up in the difficulties, even though they color everything we exist. We do have to take moments to celebrate. We do have to take moments to stand strongly and proudly in learning from each other and celebrating culture and identity and watching Indigenous people stand up strongly and clearly say, we're still here. Not only are we still here, we're still proud of who we are. We're still fighting for our language. We're still fighting for our kids. We're still fighting for this Mother Earth that matters so much. And nothing that Canada tried to do, for all the damage and all the hurt, it caused. Nothing can stop Indigenous peoples, not just from celebrating being here, but, and this is the thing that amazes me constantly, when you look at the layers of trauma and of damage done by Canada, that Indigenous peoples continue to reach out with open hands and open hearts and say, let's build a better country and a better future together. Which one of us could say that? After generations of being told that you're not good enough, that your culture has no value, to still stand up and say, no, not only does it have value, but we're happy to share this value with you. And yes, there's hurt, and there's intergenerational trauma, and huge challenges to overcome that even on a day of celebration, we will not ignore, we will not forget. But there is also such strength, such resilience, such beauty that we need to draw on, all of us sharing this land now, all of us living here, need to appreciate. Et c'est ça le message qu'on entend régulièrement de Canadiens d'un bout à l'autre de ce pays qui disent oui, nous devons marcher ensemble cette route de la réconciliation, nous devons corriger les maux terribles, les erreurs horribles du passé. Mais nous devons toujours reconnaître que la réconciliation, c'est pas juste entre les peuples autochtones et le gouvernement. Ça nous implique tous. I often reflect on the fact that we know the horror of residential schools. And we know that for generations, Canada tried very, very hard to erase Indigenous identity, culture, and strength. But even as residential schools were busy teaching Indigenous children that they had no value, every other school in this country was busy teaching non-Indigenous children that Indigenous children had no value. All schools were sharing that wronghood. And that's why reconciliation cannot just happen with Indigenous peoples. It's why all of us need to recognize our roles that continue through systemic discrimination, through unconscious bias, through the kinds of barriers that continue every single day in our present, not just in our past, that we have to fix, that we have to repair, that we have to atone for. But why it's also so important for us to celebrate. Celebrate on days like these, where the weather has driven us inside. Well, okay, let's celebrate inside and be closer and learn from each other and be together. Because we have an incredible country. With all the gifts this country has, we have a responsibility to push ourselves, to challenge ourselves, to overcome the traumas of the past that lead to trauma in the present, and be that model for our neighbors, for our friends around the world, for countries that need to figure out how to reconcile their past, and mostly how to live together in their presence and future. How to learn from each other, how to see difference not as a challenge or a weakness, but an opportunity to grow, to rethink, to become more. This is part of what we celebrate today as we discover new cultures, new dances, new songs, new foods, new ways of thinking, new ways of being. That's how we enrich our country, by listening to each other, especially those who are different from us, by learning from each other. And that's why I'm so deeply privileged to be able to gather with you all in my first event out of my COVID isolation over the past week. I got to play Frisbee with my kids on Father's Day, because, you know, that's appropriately distanced. But being able to gather in a room with all of you right now is pretty exciting, and I'm really looking forward to the rest of the celebration today. Merci beaucoup, mes chers amis. Nakumik, Natan, for being here. Masi Cho, Gayla Kasla, Miigwech, Chimigwech. Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Thank you.